Welcome, viewers. There's an increasing number of you. We're glad to see that. We appreciate your involvement to this series of interviews with Dr. Bogdan Kotnis. Hello, Bogdan. Welcome.
Hey, Robert. Hi, and welcome to you all who are watching. A continuous thank you for your time, questions, and comments.
So, Bogdan, in our last interview, you made a distinction between Germany, France, and Poland in terms of the various voices that they have. Can you elaborate? What's the unique Polish perspective?
Well, you would think that the European Union should act as one, but there are some cracks and fissures. And remember that all those nations were at war with each other prior to end of World War II.
Right.
So there are three lead UN nations forming the center, the core of the EU. Now that Great Britain has exited, so we have Germany, France, and Italy. And these center nations are Europe's full members of the G7, the G8, and the G20. And Germany's largest economy has given Germany an outsized voice. Some people say they run the whole thing. And these central nations are concerned that the newer members will catch up and create competition to the original members. Some of them were even proposing have two speeds, like speed one for the old guys and speed two for the other guys. So the European Union is still being built.
It sounds like competition would be healthy, but tell me, how is Poland's perspective different?
Poland is a relatively new EU member and a very rapidly developing economy facing an existential threat from the Russian war in Ukraine. So it's unlike the center. This gives Poland a very different perspective.
How imminent is that threat that you mentioned?
Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but just if you look at it, both see the danger stemming from the lack of sufficient support for Ukraine that might lead to a Russian victory. This victory will encourage Russians to continue expanding, which has been their plan for centuries.
Yeah.
And although they have not conquered Ukraine, they're still attacking it, but they're attacking and threatening and targeting Poland and the Baltic states. Now, for example, Russians currently use Belarus for hybrid attacks on Poland.
Yeah.
They invite refugees from Asia and Africa into Belarus and then transport them to the Belarusian-Polish border. So there's scores of undocumented aliens responded to the newspaper articles in their local papers in Asia and Africa, advertising an easy way to enter the European Union through Belarus to Poland. So you had like shuttle planes flying them to Minsk, capital of Belarus. And thousands of them tried breaching the Polish border this year. Additionally, prominent Russian politicians, including former President Medvedev, and recently the Russian defense minister constantly threatened Poland with military intervention in the Russian media. Also, some of their rockets have already penetrated Polish borders, one in December 2023, and then the second one in March. And then lately we have a third one. So these are not accidents. Russians are attempting to test Poland and NATO's readiness. They want to know how fast they react, where they have their equipment, that the airplanes that are trying to cover for the rockets. So it's an ongoing already penetration.
Well, how have Germany and France reacted to this response to this, in response to these activities?
That's the point. They kind of like they want to run the whole show looking honestly at their interests. So they have not reacted in a way that would bolster Poland's security. So we are in one union, but there's like two speeds of the union. So Germany and France neglected the Russian threat and warnings from Poland. Instead of standing up to Russia, they have tried and continue to try making deals with them, risking the security of the whole European Union. Inadvertently, they allowed Russia to gain the initiative and gain confidence that the European dependency on Russian fossil fuel is an effective tool in exerting pressure on Europe, especially Germany. Appeasing Russia resulted in their increasingly aggressive posture, and we still don't have the decisions that would really change the situation on the ground in Ukraine today.
So, but trade is really critical. So what's the real problem with trading for Russian fossil fuels between Germany and Russia?
You know, if you look at it from the Polish perspective, oil was being pumped through the pipes that would go through Poland, and Germans started building the Nord Stream pipes going around Poland through the Baltic Sea. That was dangerous for Poland, and by the way, it didn't work for the Germans. So it was a huge investment that came to naught. So this trade leads to an imbalance of risks and profits. Notice that Germans need Russian fossil fuel more than Russia needs anything from Germany. So both see this as appeasing a bear that will not be appeased. Moreover, the Poles also remember the effects of the appeasement of Germany in World War II. Remember that?
Yeah.
It didn't work out too well. So current German appeasement of Russia appears to pose a strategic blunder. There is also an historical writing on the wall. Poles remember that no one came to their aid when Germany and Russia attacked Poland and started World War II. NATO's Article 5 promised to defend any invaded NATO nation carries actually little weight in Poland because Poland was given similar promises by the West before World War II.
Yeah.
So the question is, should Russia invade today? Half of Poland would likely be occupied before NATO can respond. How long is it going to take to respond? How long is it going to take to get these lands back? Remember what happened in Ukraine. Russians stepped in and they're holding to those territories. They've been doing it for 12 years now. So is Poland going to wait for decades to regain half of its country? This is unacceptable to Poles. Poles want the power to defend themselves immediately and be confident that NATO will be only minutes behind any Polish defenses. So it's what's out there on the ground, what amount of soldiers, what kind of equipment, munitions, is it all in training? Is it ready to go, or is it only promises on paper?
What would give Poland the confidence of an immediate NATO response?
You know, practically today, the only guarantee that the war does not spill over to Poland is American troops in Poland deployed at the borders of Ukraine and Belarus, for example, in Rzeszów and Białystok. Besides that, two things: a strong and well-armed Polish military that Poles are committed to developing, and equally important, I think, a powerful Polish voice in NATO to ensure that the appeasing attitude towards Russia at the Polish expense will not again lead to Polish occupation and division.
Well, you mentioned appeasement, and you talked about the German negotiation with Russia. What specific mistakes do you see in how the French and German politicians have handled Russian aggression?
I'm not blaming Germans and French for looking out for their respective self-interest,
Yeah.
but they have failed to recognize how their short-term economic gains compromise the long-term security of the West and eventually their own sovereignty.
Yeah.
And their mistakes are our mistakes. I say our mistakes because we are all in it together. Poles, Germans, French, the rest of Europe, and of course, us, Americans. Only if we all sit together around the round table on equal terms as a team will we be able to develop a winning strategy. So I hope Germans, French, and the rest of us will benefit from looking at these few mistakes, and it should help us move forward from win to win.
So I get that you're not trying to hold anybody accountable or blame or insult anyone, but just identify shortcomings. Let's start with the French. What do you see as their mistakes or blunders?
So I'm just going to say that looking for victims is always it's a strategy of a winner, and it leads nowhere. Blaming who did what 10, 50, 100,000 years ago. We are here all together. So what the French did, the blunders, the French believed that they would be able to bring Russia to the European fold by trusting Russian good intentions
Right.
expressed with Russian willingness to trade with the West. The French believed that it was safe to allow Russia to penetrate French business and politics. For example, in 2011, President Sarkozy agreed to sell Russians their most advanced warships loaded with the latest technology. These were the Mistral class, high-tech, ultra-modern helicopter carriers. And as this transaction was carried out, we Americans changed our policy towards Russia on a dime after the Russians attacked Ukraine in 2014. So President Obama realized the mistake and pressured the French to stop the sale of the Mistral ships to the Russians.
Okay.
The French hesitated a little, but eventually French President François Hollande canceled the deal in August 2015. And the French returned the Russian down payment, plus the penalties and broken contracts, which cost them at least $440 million. They eventually sold those ships to Egypt. And then more recently, the French directly experienced aggressive posture when the Russian military Wagner group hit hard on the French interest in Africa. So when the French announced their withdrawal from Mali, the Russian military stepped right in. The French realized that being far from the Russian border, buffered by Germany and Poland, was not enough to protect French interests from Russian expansionism. So now they are changing their policy on a dime.
Interesting. Are there other examples of French appeasement?
I remember in 2019, President Emmanuel Macron hosted the only meeting between President Zelensky and Putin in France, in which Chancellor Merkel was also present. In that meeting, he criticized NATO and urged Europe, independent of America, to form a strategic partnership with Russia. And they pushed Zelensky to accept facts on the ground, give up Crimea, and allow Donbass to be an independent territory with special rights for the Russian minority.
Yeah.
If accepted, it would lead to what happened with Transnistria after the Russians attacked Moldova in 1990. And notice that Transnistria took part in the current presidential elections in Russia, which makes it a de facto Russian enclave. So the same was what the French were pushing that the Ukrainians do.
Well, what is the maybe you could explain a little bit about Transnistria, or we can do that later. But uh, what about other actions in France that maybe weren't the government itself, but significant political parties in France? What role, if any, did they have?
There's a strong pro-Russian lobby, and there is a lot of dirty Russian petrol dollars. So some influential French politicians capable of compelling the French government to moderate its policies openly follow a pro-Russian policy, never criticizing Russian expansionism.
Hmm.
Few knew in France that those politicians depended on Russian money, and Russian money meant agreeing to never criticize and always support Russia, which is one of Russia's hybrid warfare techniques. So whenever you have someone who never criticizes Russia, I smell that if you dig deep, you would find the money trail.
Can you name anybody?
Well, there was this Marie, or is Marie Le Pen. She was openly pro-Russian. In 2017, the BBC broke the news that Le Pen's National Front took a $10 million loan from the Russians through a man who called himself Mr. Mission Impossible. And shortly after, Le Pen appeared in Moscow and supported the Russian takeover of Crimea. And as I mentioned before, if you accept Russian money, you must not criticize Russia or Putin. We saw that connection presented by Spanish courts in the case of the Catalan rebellion financed by Russian funds.
Right.
We should also look carefully at those in the US who never criticize Russia, and especially Putin.
Yes, indeed. How do you think this Polish perspective might have influenced French strategy?
Let me give you some Polish perspective. It was in August 2008, quite a while ago, when Polish President Lech Kaczynski called the presidents of Ukraine, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, and they all flew and made into the border of Georgia, and he made this famous trip to protest the Russian annexation of parts of Georgia then in 2008.
Yeah.
And he said, now Georgia, then Ukraine, eventually Poland, and the rest of Europe will suffer Russian expansionism. So Poles have been warning, pleading, talking, and this is in the open air. So how much behind the closed doors, I don't know. But had the French taken Polish warnings seriously in 2008, Russia would not be in the position they were in 2014, in 2022, or today, able to challenge NATO, the European Union, and the United States in Ukraine for 12 years now.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty dizzying story. What do you have of regarding Germany?
I'm especially hopeful because lately Germany, France, and Poland reactivated something that's called the Weimar Triangle, a format in which the three countries discuss face to face the fate of Europe. I think it's a good way to go. Nevertheless, while the past is not always prologue, consider this. Germany lost World War II and capitulated unconditionally. We, the United States, decided to rebuild Germany and made it into one of the global economic engines.
Yeah.
But still, Germany was divided into West and East parts until 1990. So, we talk about this old Reich and being there forever. Actually, just count the years from 1990. That's where you were actually what we have today as a political entity was formed.
Mm-hmm.
So Germans had to play nice with Russia to be able to reunite.
Yeah.
They ultimately paid Russia several $billions to motivate an already weakened Russia to hand over East Germany. On the other hand, Poland had been fighting ever since 1945 to regain independence from Russia and succeeded in 1989. So kind of like look at the dates. Because of the fight of Poland, Germany was able to unite. It was Poland, with their peaceful solidarity movement, the Polish Pope, Zbigniew Brzezinski in Washington, and the powerful Polish-American lobby that ultimately broke Russia's back and rendered Russia weak enough to accept Germany's offer. Now, in our media, we remember mostly the collapse of the Berlin Wall and often ignore the long Polish resistance, its solidarity movement, and the Polish Pope.
Yes.
The wall simply did not collapse by itself. And believe me, I was there. I lived in West Berlin for a little while, and I traveled from Poland to East Germany, quite an experience. Germans especially, but also the rest of the world, need to acknowledge and remember how much Poland contributed to the collapse of the wall and the German reunification.
So you think that consequences might have been different if Poland had been at the table back earlier on?
Well, again, remember, 2008, Poland says, for God's sakes, let's do something. Russians are not going to stop annexing parts of Georgia. You know, they're just getting ready to move seriously west. And strong and independent Poland has been and is to the German advantage. They just have to open their eyes. And we have to open our eyes and understand it. But once Germany reunified, it got busy reviving an old German idea of running Europe with the support of Russian natural resources. And Poland warned against the dependence on Russia for fossil fuel. Still, Germans built Nord Stream 1, then Nord Stream 2 to get gas directly from Russia, bypassing existing pipes that ran through Ukraine and Poland. The Germans disregarded the Polish warning because it departed from the role Germany assigned to Poland, a junior partner. So Germans wanted Poland to fall in place as a junior partner, a supplier of cheap labor. And the decision to bypass Ukraine and Poland was itself a signal to Russia that they could treat these countries differently than Germany and the top three EU countries. And then they could be more aggressive towards them. And Germans and the French supported a ceasefire in Ukraine in 2014 and opposed pushing Russia to return the lost territory to Ukrainians as unrealistic. And after 8 years, when Russia hit Ukraine even harder in 2022, Germans first refused to assist military, to give any military assistance. And then they dosed the help in an insignificant trickle, actually waiting for Ukraine to collapse. German and French plans, when we look at it today, were a disaster, and they had both failed.
Yeah.
Today, the Nord Stream pipes are not operational, and Germany is scrambling for new energy sources. They're reluctantly joining the support for Ukraine at least 12 years too late. Still, lately, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz insisted that he would not send long-range German missiles to Ukraine, despite the pleas from NATO and the growing opposition within Germany. If we accepted that position, where would we be today?
Well, if we accepted your analysis, what do you recommend we do now?
Well, I propose 3 points. First, sanctions are a cute political show of action unless we increase pressure on those who bypass the sanctions.
Mhm.
I would establish crippling penalties for countries cheating the system. Second, I will talk openly without fear of retribution about the geographic dangers Russia has caused with its territorial aggression. We should discuss where should we push them back today and how. And third, I would talk openly about how to penetrate them through military expeditionary forces and support those parts of Russia who want to gain independence.
Bogdan, your desire to use expeditionary forces reminds me of General LeMay back in the 60s who wanted to bomb Moscow, and earlier on General Patton, who wanted to wage war with the Russians. That's a fairly hawkish attitude that won no followers then and unlikely to win followers today.
No, I understand that, but also we have to open our eyes. We can just be where we are, and we're losing uh, uh, our position globally and also economically. We're losing, and we're confusing a strong defense with aggression. I'm not saying go and attack Moscow, but I'm saying show them that we can and that we're ready. It's not enough to tell them, oh, maybe you're pushing too hard. Give it a thought. Maybe not 10 bombs a day, maybe only 5. Uh, so I've stressed many times that the key Polish objective is to maintain peace and current borders that have given the world an unprecedented period of relative stability. So Poland is for peace, 100%. But notice Poles are not dropping any bombs. Russians are dropping bombs, killing people, raping women, and producing massive amounts of munitions. You
Well,
forget the Russians have been waging war and gabbling up territories. So the objective is to stop them and not follow them into a fight.
so you're not really advocating an invasion of Russia, but I think you're thinking we may be a little too timid around Russian threats. I mean, an example might be declining to send long range missiles to Ukraine so they could retaliate against Russia's capital to the extent that Russia feels free to attack Ukraine's capital.
Exactly. But by denying Ukraine means to attack locations used by Russia to attack Ukraine gives Russians green light to continue the war. There's no risk to them.
So, if I understand you correctly, you're appealing to the French and Germans to wake up and face Russia for what it really is. And also, America, France, and Germany together need to wake up.
Yes, Robert. We need to continue and stand together if we want to stop belligerent Russia. They clearly say they're fighting NATO and the United States. They don't mince words. We should take these loud, continuous proclamations seriously. It is not about who is to blame, who is right, or who is wrong. It's not about our individual interests. We will only be able to win by being united and coordinating our efforts effectively. We cannot win if we give up at the start, afraid to wake up the mythical Russian bear.
Well, thank you, Bogdan. As always, you've given us a perspective that varies significantly from what we get in our media. And I appreciate your looking at the situation and the turmoil that's there and giving us an honest appraisal.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, the viewers. And we promise there's going to be more. Keep on checking out and see you soon. Thank you.